After 15 years of marriage, my husband took me on a surprise vacation. On the last night, he held my hand and said, "This trip was my goodbye gift." Confused, I asked what he meant. He smiled coldly and said, "I've moved on. My new wife is waiting back home." Tears blurred my vision. But when we got off the plane, he realized he made a terrible mistake. I never thought I'd be here, writing one of these posts. But here I am, because my life just imploded in a way I never saw coming. And I need to get it out. I've been married to my husband, Ryan, 45 male, for 15 years. We met in college, fell in love, got married, had 2 kids, 13 male and 10 female, built a life together. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing ever seemed bad enough to destroy us. Or so I thought. 2 months ago, Ryan surprised me with a vacation. Italy. 2 weeks. Just the 2 of us. I was stunned because he's never been the grand romantic gesture type. Don't get me wrong, he's been a good husband, or so I believed, but he's never been the kind of guy to plan something like this. And it wasn't just a quick trip, it was meticulously planned. Flights, hotels, even dinner reservations at Michelin-starred restaurants. He told me he wanted to reconnect. That we'd been so busy with work and kids that we'd let our relationship fall into routine. That we deserved this trip. I was touched. And excited. And a little guilty, because a small, nagging voice in the back of my head wondered why now? But I pushed that feeling aside. My husband wanted to take me on a romantic, once-in-a-lifetime vacation. Who was I to question it? We landed in Rome, and it was perfect. We ate our weight in pasta, drank wine at sunset, and took photos in front of the Colosseum. He held my hand, kissed me randomly, looked at me like he used to when we were young and in love. It felt like we were 20 again. I felt special. Chosen. Like we had fixed something without even realizing it was broken. Florence was just as magical. We wandered through art galleries, he whispered jokes in my ear, made me laugh like we were newlyweds again. He even surprised me with a small pendant from a little jewelry shop. A heart. And then there was the Amalfi Coast. If you've never been, it's unreal. Cliffs covered in colorful houses, the ocean stretching endlessly, little winding streets that feel like they belong in a fairy tale. We swam in the sea, took boat rides, ate the freshest seafood I've ever had. I kept thinking, I'm so lucky. I'm so incredibly lucky. And then came the last night. Ryan took me to a restaurant on the cliffside in Positano. It was beautiful. Candlelit, overlooking the ocean, the sky a deep orange as the sun set. I remember everything so clearly, down to the way the wine glass felt in my hand, the smell of lemon trees in the air, the way he reached across the table and held my hand. He smiled at me. And then he said it. This trip was my goodbye gift. At first, I thought I misheard him. What? His grip on my hand tightened. His smile didn't waver. I've moved on. My new wife is waiting back home. I blinked. My brain couldn't process the words. It was like hearing a foreign language. I laughed. Because it was a joke, right? A horrible, cruel joke, but still, what else could it be? Ryan, I said, still laughing a little. What the hell are you talking about? And then, his face changed. The warmth, the affection, the softness, it all vanished. His eyes, which had been so full of love just hours ago, were now cold. Matter of fact. I've been seeing someone for over a year, he said, like he was telling me he forgot to take the trash out. We're in love. I wanted to give you this one last nice memory before we ended things. I physically felt my heart stop. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for the I'm kidding, for the moment where he'd realize how insane he sounded. It never came. Instead, he kept talking. I didn't want things to get messy, he said. You'll get the house, I've set up financial support. You and the kids will be okay. Like he was doing me a favor. Like he hadn't just set fire to my entire life. The world around me blurred. I could hear the waves crashing below, the clinking of glasses from other tables, a couple laughing somewhere nearby. It all felt wrong. I pulled my hand back so fast that the wine glass in front of me nearly toppled over. I shook my head. No. No, you're messing with me. He sighed, like this was hard for him. I don't want to fight, he said. I just need you to accept it. My vision blurred. Tears, anger, betrayal, it all hit me at once. 15 years. 15 years. 2 kids. A life built together. And he ended it over dinner like it was a casual Tuesday night conversation. I couldn't breathe. My stomach twisted. I wanted to scream. To flip the table. To cause a scene. But I didn't. Because I was in shock. Because my body refused to process what was happening. I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the stone floor. People turned to look. Ryan sighed again. Come on, don't be dramatic. That was it. That was the moment I realized I didn't even know the man sitting in front of me. I turned and walked out. I barely remember the walk back to the hotel. I locked myself in the bathroom, sat on the cold tile floor, and sobbed. Not just for me. For my kids. For the life I thought I had. And the worst part? I still had to fly home with him the next day. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating. My eyes were swollen, my head pounding from crying all night. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to do anything. But the buzzing wouldn't stop. I reached for my phone. 30 missed calls. Mostly from my best friend, Monica. That's when I knew something was really, really wrong. I sat up, my stomach twisting. I ignored Ryan, who was sitting on the other side of the room, casually scrolling through his phone like he hadn't just destroyed my entire life the night before. I called Monica back. The second she picked up, she screamed into the phone. Oh my God, pick up your damn phone! Where are you? My voice came out hoarse. Italy. What's going on? She sucked in a breath. You don't know yet? My heart dropped. No what? Then she said something that made my blood turn to ice. Ryan's new wife? The one he left you for? She's married. I felt like the ground had just ripped out from under me. What? She has a husband, Monica said, breathless. A very rich, very powerful husband. And guess what? He just found out about Ryan. I blinked, my brain struggling to keep up. How do you even know this? Because the guy's been looking for Ryan. He's trying to find him. I turned and looked at Ryan, still lounging on the hotel chair, oblivious. I lowered my voice. What do you mean looking for him? I mean as in he's pissed. As in, this woman has been leading a double life, and her real husband is the kind of guy you don't mess with. I stood up so fast my vision swam. Monica. Who is this guy? She hesitated. He's in real estate. But not like normal real estate. Think dangerous people. People who don't take betrayal lightly. I swallowed hard. My pulse was hammering in my ears. Monica kept talking. Someone in our friend group recognized the woman. They saw her at an event with her real husband a few months ago. Her name's Vanessa. She's been married to this guy for almost 10 years. I felt dizzy. Does Ryan know? No. And you cannot tell him over the phone. You need to get back here first. Whatever you do, do not tell him until you're safe. I was shaking. This wasn't real. This wasn't happening. I turned and looked at Ryan again, really looked at him. The man who had crushed me just hours ago was sitting there, completely unaware that his entire world was about to collapse. He must have sensed me staring because he glanced up. What? I forced my voice to stay steady. We need to go. Now. He frowned. Our flight isn't for a few hours. I grabbed my bag. I don't care. We're going to the airport. Now. He rolled his eyes. Are you serious? Don't be dramatic. I walked up to him, leaned in, and whispered, Ryan, if you want to live to see next week, get your ass up right now. His face twisted. What the hell are you talking about? I didn't answer. I grabbed my things and stormed out of the hotel room. He cursed and followed me. We got to the airport faster than I thought possible. I could barely breathe the whole way there. I kept checking over my shoulder, paranoid that someone was watching us. Ryan was still clueless. And he was annoyed. The entire cab ride, he kept asking me what my problem was, why I was acting like a psycho. I ignored him. My only focus was getting on the plane, getting home, and figuring out how to tell him without getting myself caught in the crossfire. By the time we reached security, Ryan had had enough. He grabbed my arm. Tell me what's going on. I yanked my arm back. I'll tell you when we're home. No. He snapped. Tell me now. And then, his phone rang. I saw the name on the screen before he did. Vanessa. He looked at me, then at his phone. He hesitated, just for a second, then answered. Hey baby, he said, his voice suddenly soft. And then, his face drained of color. His jaw clenched. His whole body went stiff. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I didn't need to. I saw it in his eyes. Something was very, very wrong. He swallowed hard. Wait, what? No, Vanessa, what are you talking about? I held my breath. And then, in the middle of an international airport, in front of hundreds of people, my soon-to-be ex-husband, the man who had just torn my life apart, screamed into his phone. What do you mean he knows? Ryan's voice echoed through the crowded airport terminal, a sharp, panicked. What do you mean he knows? Heads turned. People glanced at us, startled by his outburst. I felt my heart slam against my ribs as I grabbed his wrist, pulling him aside into a quieter corner near a row of empty chairs. He was still gripping his phone so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. His face had gone pale, his expression one of pure, undiluted fear. I had never seen Ryan scared before. Not like this. He turned his back slightly, lowering his voice. Vanessa, tell me exactly what happened. A pause. His breathing was shallow, his free hand curling into a fist at his side. Then he muttered. You told me he was in Miami for the week. You told me we had time. I felt sick. So it was true. He really had no idea that Vanessa was playing him just as badly as he had played me. I should have felt satisfied. I should have let the betrayal sink into his bones the way it had shattered me just hours ago. But instead I was standing there, watching my soon-to-be ex-husband unravel as his life caved in on him. Ryan kept whispering harshly into the phone. I don't care what the hell he said, where is he now? Where is he? Another pause. Then Ryan's entire body went rigid. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He swallowed. His head snapped up, his eyes darting wildly around the airport. Like he was looking for someone. My stomach twisted. Ryan! He ignored me. He took a step forward, gripping the back of his neck, muttering, No, no, no! Under his breath. Then he turned on me. What do you know? I blinked. What? His voice was low, sharp. What do you know? I don't bullshit. He stepped closer, his eyes flashing with something I couldn't place. You wanted to leave the hotel in a hurry. You've been acting weird since this morning. You knew something. I exhaled slowly. Monica called me. His face twisted. Monica? She knew about Vanessa. She found out last night. She called me this morning to warn me. Ryan's breath hitched. He ran a hand down his face. Then he whispered, He's here. My heart stopped. What? Ryan turned slightly, his entire body tense. His jaw was clenched so hard I thought his teeth might break. Vanessa just told me. He knows about us. He found out while we were still in Italy. And now he's here. I looked around instinctively, my pulse roaring in my ears. The airport was busy, people rushing past us, luggage rolling, announcements echoing over the intercom. But Ryan was terrified. And if he was scared, I knew we were in trouble. I took a shaky breath. Ryan, who the hell is Vanessa's husband? His throat bobbed. And then he said the name. Luca De Luca. I didn't recognize it at first. But then Ryan grabbed my wrist and hissed into my ear. He's not just rich. He's mafia. The blood drained from my face. I felt my entire body go cold, my legs nearly giving out beneath me. Mafia. My husband had left me for a married woman. And that married woman's husband was a literal mafia boss. Ryan's hand was gripping my wrist so tight it hurt. We need to leave. Now. I snapped out of my shock. Ryan, we're in an airport. It's not like we can just. He's not going to kill me in the middle of O'Hare. Ryan muttered. But if he finds me? He'll make sure I wish he had. He let go of my wrist and started walking, fast. I hurried after him. Where are we going? We need to get out of public view, he said. There's a hotel attached to the terminal. We can hide out until I figure out what to do. We need to go home to the kids. Ryan whirled on me. And lead him straight to our children? Are you insane? I stopped cold. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about Ryan. This wasn't just about me. Luca De Luca wasn't the type of man to stop at just Ryan. If he was as dangerous as Ryan was making him sound, he would go after everyone involved. And that included me. And worse, my kids. A shudder ran through me. My mind spun through every possible scenario. I had to get to my kids before anything happened. I had to warn Monica. I had to. Ryan stopped walking so abruptly that I ran straight into his back. I stumbled, cursing under my breath. Ryan, what the? Then I saw what he was looking at. A man. A man in a dark navy suit, standing at the arrival gate. He was looking directly at Ryan. He wasn't holding a sign. He wasn't checking his phone. He wasn't scanning the crowd like someone waiting for a friend. He was waiting for Ryan. Ryan muttered under his breath. Shit. Then the man smiled. A slow, knowing smile. He nodded once. And then he reached into his jacket. I grabbed Ryan's arm. Run. We didn't wait to see what the man pulled out. We ran. The air inside the airport was thick with the noise of rolling suitcases, muffled announcements over the intercom, and the rush of people moving in all directions. But to me, it was all just static. All I could hear was my own heartbeat slamming in my ears. Ryan was right next to me, gripping my wrist so tightly I could feel the sweat on his palms. Behind us, I could hear footsteps. Not running. Not chasing. Just following. Steady. Patient. Like a hunter closing in on his prey. We weaved through the crowds, pushing past confused travelers. I didn't care where we were going, I just knew we needed to keep moving. Ryan was muttering under his breath, swearing, his breath coming out in sharp bursts. Then a voice. Low. Calm. Deadly. Ryan. Ryan froze. And that was all it took. Before I could even process what was happening, someone grabbed Ryan by the shoulder and spun him around. I stumbled back, barely catching myself. And that's when I saw him. Luca de Luca. He was standing there, only a few feet away, wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue suit. He was older than I expected, mid-50s maybe, but he carried himself like a man who had never once had to raise his voice to be feared. His hair was dark, slicked back, silver at the temples. His sharp, calculating eyes locked onto Ryan with unblinking intensity. He smiled. Not a friendly smile. A smile that said, I have already won. Ryan didn't move. He didn't speak. I could see the terror in his eyes. Luca took a slow step forward. You know who I am? Ryan swallowed. His Adam's apple bobbed. Yes. Luca hummed. Good. That makes this easier. My stomach twisted into a knot. People walked past us, completely unaware that something very dangerous was unfolding in plain sight. Luca reached into his jacket. I felt my entire body lock up, my breath catching in my throat, but it wasn't a gun. It was a photo. Luca held it out to Ryan, his gaze steady. Recognize her? I stepped closer and saw Vanessa. Her smile frozen in time. Her dark hair falling in waves over her shoulders. A picture-perfect moment. A mugshot. Ryan's face went white. Luca tilted his head slightly. You thought you were the only one she was lying to? Ryan's breathing shook. What is this? Luca smiled again, like a wolf baring its teeth. It means she's gone. And she took your money with her. My stomach dropped. Ryan's hands trembled as he reached for the photo, his fingers brushing the edges like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. You're lying, he choked out. She wouldn't just. Luca stepped even closer. Vanessa didn't love you, Ryan. His voice was almost gentle. She loved the money. She loved the game. He smirked. And she played you beautifully. Ryan's knees buckled. I took a small step back, watching my husband, the man who had just destroyed me, fall apart in front of my eyes. Vanessa was gone. The woman he left me for. The woman he risked everything for. She had taken his money, his future, his entire life, and vanished. I should have felt satisfied. But all I felt was emptiness. Luca let the silence stretch before speaking again. I'm a businessman, Ryan. I could have handled this differently. I could have made an example out of you. Ryan flinched. Luca smiled. But lucky for you. Vanessa played me too. His jaw tightened slightly. And I don't kill men over women. It's bad for business. Ryan let out a shaky breath, his shoulders sagging in relief. But then Luca's voice turned cold. But don't mistake my mercy for weakness. Ryan stiffened. Luca took another step forward, until they were nose to nose. If I ever see you again, Ryan, if you ever cross into my world again, if I so much as hear your name in the wrong circles. He leaned in. I will not hesitate. Ryan let out a strangled noise, his entire body shaking. Luca straightened, smoothing out his suit jacket. Then he turned his gaze on me. I sucked in a sharp breath. For a second, his expression softened. I read your file, he said, his voice lighter. You're not part of this. You're just collateral damage. I didn't respond. Because what do you say to that? Luca nodded once. And then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Ryan collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I just stood there, staring at nothing, my mind blank. The world hadn't ended. But it sure as hell felt like it had. The ride home was silent. Ryan barely spoke. He was shaking the entire flight, his hands clutching the armrests so hard his knuckles turned white. When we finally landed, I didn't wait for him. I walked straight out of the airport, straight into Monica's waiting car. Ryan called me that night. I didn't answer. He tried again. Again. Then, finally a text. Please. I don't have anyone else. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I realized the truth. Ryan was alone. Vanessa was gone. His money was gone. His job, his future, his entire plan, All of it was gone. And I was free. For the first time in 15 years, I was truly, completely free. I stared at his message for a long time. Then I turned off my phone. And I went to bed.